There's a lot of great phrases we read today when we're in business. Today is the first day of your life. Life is in session. Are you present? Happy are those who dream dreams and are willing to pay the price to make them come true. When we read those, the great thing about our MMP approach to business is then that we also have something that we can do with them. So when we encounter them, even if they'd already been there once before, they mean something when we're engaged in a business like this. First and foremost, in starting and building teams of people, as a very young entrepreneur, getting my feet wet, I was told to read. And I wasn't really excited about reading again. I thought once you got through with school and all of that reading could cease and that you could just now enjoy, smell the flowers, look at the pictures. But not necessarily read. But reading I did. And in reading, I find that it's a constructive way to help shape how we think and feel about what it is that's going on around us. So early on, gang, it's nearly 30 years ago, I gave a talk about self-image. I want to revisit that today, maybe update it, change it, and rearrange it in a little ways so that you can have a feel for it in today's age. Suffice to say, nobody starts at the finish line. There's always something that we want to engage on, which means that we have to start where we are and then look forward to crossing the finish line. And hopefully by the time we get there, we realize that we're a better person as a result of preparing, working, coaching, mentoring, and expending the energy, inspiration, and perspiration so that we can indeed cross that finish line and set another one. Many times when people get going in life, they have very small goals because it's determined based upon their self-image, their self-esteem, their self-worth. And educators have been studying people's self-image and self-esteem for years. You can go back to Sigmund Freud, and he talks about the hierarchy of needs. How do we get to the final top, which they call self-awareness or self-esteem? And by the time we reach there, one of the others need a little bit more repair, and we need to get back in there and work and begin to look again at some of those. And when coaching is a very relevant thing in sports today, is it not? It seems like what makes somebody very good at their sport? Talent, physical attributes. Maybe they're blessed physically so that they can hit a golf ball or dunk a basketball without a trampoline or whatever it is. But physically, some people are gifted. Yet, even though some may be gifted physically more than another, they seem to fall short of reaching the pinnacle or the goal that they've set for themselves, or even though they've had the same coaching. Parenting. Parents have parented children and perhaps had more than one. Maybe two of the same sex, only to find out that each one turned out to be just a little different. Yet they were both raised pretty much the same. What made the difference? Well, if you listen and read and listen, and if you had a chance to read Dr. Joseph Murphy, or if you had an opportunity to read what Charles Simmons has to say, or any of the people that are great psychologists and all the psychobabble, as sometimes it's referred to, you might then get into, in some of the other books about what Vernon Howard had to say, or even Josh McDowell and his approach to how having a God-centered life affects your self-esteem and what makes the difference. And recently, Stanford, which is, of course, a very notable school of thought, University of Education, generally funded by other things, not all private tuitions, have studies on a regular basis. And there are faith-based organizations that also study how do we help these kids that are coming up. Well, we just raise their self-esteem. That's what it worked. That's all they really focused on. Yet recently released study from Harvard says that's really not it. That maybe after all these years, Jody Victor was right back in the 70s. Well, they left my name off in the article. But let me just revisit with you a little bit, because many people have written about what it takes to become successful. One young writer said, "When I was coming up through high school, there was a fairly widespread belief that self-esteem wasn't given but acquired. Coach Fitz gave us a mechanism to get self-esteem. He hollered at us. He put us through boot camp. But by the end, we learned how to deal with pain and failure. We learned how not to blame our problems on other people. Coach Fitz made us better than we thought we could be. Interesting about Coach Fitz, while one half of the population is trying to dedicate the football field after him, the other half is trying to get him to relieve himself of employment. It's all how you face today's world. There are some people that just don't want to see you get hurt. Did they yell at you? Oh. Did they hurt your feelings? And so they'll run right in with Band-Aids or a tourniquet or whatever it might need. And sometimes people lose the Coach Fitzes in life. But when time gets the toughest, this young author goes on to say that when his life had gone extremely well, but in those moments that it did not go well, he said, it's Coach Fitz's voice that I hear. I don't think that anyone could enter my life now who could influence me to that extent. The author says, you are so much more pliable when you're at that age. There are people who have that gift of getting inside. When parents block them, it's a terrible waste. Well, perhaps you had somebody influence you in a very positive way, or maybe you did read some of those great behavioral psychiatrists, or Dr. Maxwell Maltz, or any of those. Maybe even Robert Schuller, Norman Vincent Peale. Dr. Peale would constantly talk to people about its enthusiasm, God within. But I think that you'd understand that if it is to be, it's up to me. We need those mental thumbtacks on a regular basis because nobody starts at the finish line. We all start where we are, and no matter where we are, it can either be pathetic or great depending on our point of view. Self-image. Interesting. Are we a product of our environment or a reaction to our environment? I've always tried to suggest to the people and the teams of people that we put together to say to you, you are certainly not a product of your environment. Not at all. We talk about the twins that were both raised in poverty in the projects of Houston, Texas. One came up and as a result became a multimillionaire while his twin brother was incarcerated. What was the difference? It wasn't just enough that they were raised identically the same and they had the same values. The difference was, did they hang out with other folks who shared the same value, who supported that self-esteem? So is self-image or self-esteem, is it the horse or the cart? And hopefully you'll discover today which it is. If it is to be, it's up to me. Nearly 40 years ago, when I embarked on any type of an adventure, I realized that if it is to be, it was up to me, that I really couldn't really afford the luxury of wondering about a self-esteem. I realized that it had to be more self-control. You see, there's some people say, well, this is just the way I am. Really? Gosh, that's a great excuse. Or he's always like that. No kidding. That should be a certain sign to change. If you're that predictable, if someone can close their eyes and already predict what's going to come through the door. I believe that we should always err on the side of being a reaction to our environment and be in self-control rather than be a product of our environment or just worry about things that are going to increase our self-esteem. Now, I'm sure there'll be a big debate. A lot of people will talk about it, but let me tell you, when you're in a Plan B approach to business and you're involved with a team of people like M&P, you're going to see it's very evident that our Plan B approach to business brings the intangibles, puts you in a community with people who share the same values, positive peer pressure, and it's very, very meaningful. And it will increase your self-esteem and your self-awareness because it is the cart and not the horse. As a matter of fact, some of you being in the business maybe even just a short period of time, I think one of the first encounters that you have selected the right box on the menu of life is when people say, you're different. Or we've known you, but something's changed. What is it? Because they just can't seem to put their finger or thumb on it. Oh, I know what it is. You changed your hairstyle, or you shaved something, or you walk differently. I don't know. You look awfully happy. how we want to position ourselves to be successful. That means we may have to postpone something, whether it's a round of golf or even a television program. Doesn't mean you give anything up. Because if your obviously goal is to become successful, you're not giving something up. You're positioning yourself for success to do it in the style in which you'd really like to do it. And you're just being miserable playing on that golf course that's filled with bees when you know you deserve to be on Pebble Beach. 3 things are important to a good self-image. 3 things. 3 things, just 3 things. 3 very simple things, 3 things. I like doing things in threes or small numbers. I don't like to get beyond 7 because a lot of people don't remember. But first of all, one of the most important things of the 3 is your relationship to yourself. How do you take care of yourself? What do you do for yourself? How do you feed yourself? Do you know some people take better care of their automobile? Some people will let things go on their own, but they'll do more for their children than for themselves. But your relationship to yourself should be a growing one. What are you doing to fertilize, to grow, to cleanse, to encourage, to cheer on, to really can't wait for tomorrow? Because, today's as ugly as it gets. This is as bad as it gets today. Isn't that a wonderful feeling? What a great way to live your life. Number 2 is your relationship to God. Regardless on how you choose to participate in your religion, it is vital that you have it. You need a good relationship with God. Now, I guess we could probably turn that over to theologians, and there could be a 2-hour talk about it, but this is about self-image and self-esteem. But number 3, it is vitally important that sometimes gets ignored, and that's your relationship to who? Your dog? Your plant? No, it's to others. How is your relationship to others? Those are the 3 things that are important to a good self-image. For instance, some of us need to go through what we call Rio. We need to reinvent ourselves. We haven't done real well with ourselves, others, and God. We need to change. Darn. I enjoyed being miserable. Matter of fact, I enjoyed sharing misery with other people. I enjoyed bringing people down to my level. When I saw other people with excitement, I could sap it from them in a single bound. Being negative certainly doesn't pay well. But we do need instead to reinvent ourselves, to update, to upgrade, and to own our personality. Recently, I was talking to some students who were suffering and getting better grades. They were just not doing well. And it was the teacher's fault. The relationship they had with the teacher, it was the school system, it was everything. By the time we got all done, they discovered that really it was the relationship inside the classroom. It wasn't necessarily the teacher or the books or the curriculum. It was, "Hi, Mrs. Victor, can Steve come out and play?" It was the peer pressure within the room. It's not enough that you and I will do that, but we also have to hang around other people who subscribe to the same values. Agreed? That's what I love about our business. That's what I love about our community. Good people seek it out, understand it, grow, flourish. Others, as a man thinketh, so is he. Isn't that right? It doesn't say, as a man thinketh, well, maybe someday, you never know. By golly, gosh, bet you by golly, wow, he might turn out that way. It says very emphatically that as a man thinketh, so is he. I love it. I cheer myself on with that one all the time. I think one of the sneakiest things Kathy ever did was one time when I was feeling down a little bit, not really growing my self-esteem, my self-awareness, is whenever I heard off in a distance an audio of myself repeating those very words. So if you're listening to this audio and the person who needs to hear it's in the other room, turn it up at this point, right? But as a man thinketh, so is he. Now, do you change your mind without input from your self-image? No, you do not. That's been proven. Don't try to debate this one. We'll define self-image. Self-image is the visualization that your mind is about to comprehend of yourself, or in other words, the picture that you've mentally painted of yourself. You think you're either fat or skinny, tall or short, smart or ignorant, positive or negative. As a man thinketh, so is he. Say, well, I'm just always going to be heavy. This is just the way I am. I'm just big-boned and born this way, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way I am. I'm just love it or not. It's just it. Listen, this is important. You observe others, and you see their talent. You say, look at that person. They could knock the socks off this business. Have you ever done that? You meet them, Ken and Barbie. Hey, this couple, touchdown, baby. They look sharp. They could really build a business. However, you are shocked and almost surprised by their reaction. You see no joy, no peace, and they're not excited. Well, you see, the picture that you have painted for them is not the one that they see. You see, the picture that they see is the one that they've painted on the canvas of their mind that's visible only to themselves. Same for you, young man, young woman, whomever is listening to me. It is the picture that you have painted for yourself. And let me share with you, you and I cannot paint on the canvas of somebody else's mind their image of themselves. But we can do something. And I have to be kind of cautious because I think, gosh, the newest person in the business should be listening to this. So I'm trying to hold back and not be too ornery in what I'm about to say. But for those of us grizzly veterans, we can do something. We can throw paint on their canvas. I love to do that. Causing them to think. Giving them an audio that kind of shares with them to beat them up to success, not beat them down. They've already had that, where people have said to them, hey, big ears, big nose, or hey, here comes so-and-so, weird face, or whatever it is. They all have these great little nicknames. And in the Plan A world, it seems like you can't even join a conversation without them cracking on you, as they say. Kind of, chiding you, kind of putting you down, saying, yeah, it wasn't for whatever, you wouldn't have whatever. I don't really hang around with them too much. I'm not really a very good pro. And if I do hear those things, I flush them out. I do a little zippity-doo-dah voice to myself. I love self-talk. I think it helps raise our self-esteem. But we can throw paint on the canvas to motivate them to pick up the brush and to begin to repaint, to change their self-image. You can do that. That's the great news. Doesn't matter how you were raised. Man, you could have been raised where you had to kneel on acorns in a closet for the first 20 years of your life. Doesn't matter, because the minute that you decide to make a change, man cannot comprehend how big that computer is on the 6 inches between your ears. They say it would be larger than the government's computers. That it's absolutely not measurable. You can immediately begin to pick up the brush and to repaint a whole new image of yourself. So you should never say, I could never do that. I could never be that. And I certainly must not do this. Or I just couldn't be positive. You should never position yourself where you resist change. You need to avoid, drop, and delete such statements. Never say it's hopeless. Gosh. The story is the guy laying on the sidewalk and he's suffering and he needs a prescription filled immediately within 3 minutes. The guy comes by and says, well, give it to me. I'll try to get back in time. The story goes, he wouldn't let go. He was waiting for someone who said he would be back, not try to be back. When you're new in a business, sometimes when you say, I'll try to do that, you're setting yourself up for failure. You have to learn to program your mind for success. So never say, try. You must be constantly looking for ways to get it done. Now, one way I can share this with you is, I'm privy to Kathy receiving a message one morning when I knew she had a 2 o'clock appointment. But the message that she received at 10 o'clock was going to rearrange her entire day. It caused a certain number of things that had to get done that wasn't humanly possible to the average guy. However, when I realized the 2 o'clock appointment was hair, I knew that Kathy, in a single bound, would have energy beyond my wildest imagination. I couldn't be prouder of her. Because, Kathy's brilliant. I always tell people, if you ever want to know why our business is the size that it is and as successful it is, you apparently haven't met Kathy yet. I love a book that says move ahead with possibility thinking. I like Magic of Thinking Big. I love the idea that I still carry with me today is my me card. If it is to be, it's up to me. I love that idea. I strongly suggest you give it a try. The other thing I love about MMP is the intangibles. For instance, how many times did you hear, and we talk about developing a positive self-image, or any kind of a self-image, how many times did you hear, you can do it? I'm sure you can. Things that build you up, that people say, I love you, versus I told you so. You didn't really expect that, did you? And you're lazy. It's amazing. It takes balance in our lives, but I love what Bob McEwen always shares with us. He talks about shape the will, but don't scratch the spirit. So guard what you say to your children, to others, but also, most importantly, to yourself. Therefore, the biggest tools that you'll ever come across in your business, professional life, and growing your family, and as you approach this business, the biggest tools will be your words. Your words are your worth are your words. Someone can give you a book. They can sell you things for $350 if that'd be your choice. But you need to provide for those that will be near and dear you, not just yourself. For our children, for our team, we need to set the proper tools for greater potential. So developing a self-image is important. But then, not just developing a self-image, how about a good self-image? Well, someone who has a good self-image is somebody who recognizes that they have strengths and weaknesses. Oh, duh, got the strengths down. That's a lot better than saying, duh, got the weaknesses down. But you don't want to just have strengths where everybody thinks you're just conceited and arrogant. You might think you have a great self-image. Other people might think you're just conceited. Oh. But it's important that someone with a good self-image accepts him or herself, that they're open, they convey their thoughts. Much like I can say to my sons, I love you, and they can return it. A good self-image says that he can express his inner feelings of his heart without the fear of criticism or someone receiving the wrong opinion. He's confident and of faith. He can join in with others, or he can also celebrate others' joy without feeling threatened or on the defense. Well, how about, what are some signs of a bad self-image? Well, there's someone who doesn't trust himself, let alone other people. Bad self-image, don't trust me with that because I can't be trusted with that. You ought to get them a whole wagon load of that then. What it really is saying is I have a bad self-image. Or they're always questioning their ability, seeking confirmation. They'll say a lot of you knows, in their conversation. Or always questioning what people say about them. What did she say about me? I know I was out of the room. They were talking about me, weren't they? Always questioning their talent. No, I'm not very good. Sometimes you can even just compliment their hairstyle. Oh, this. Nothing, really. That's not your right answer. All you need to do is say, thank you. When someone compliments you, just say, thank you. You don't have to say, oh, come on, you worked at it. Say thank you and move on. Don't always be questioning things. People with a bad self-image pretty much have developed a persecution complex. They're not always open because they're afraid you won't like them. Did you know some people actually dress down because they wouldn't want to be approached for success? They deliberately fail interviews because they don't want responsibility. They have a poor self-image. They don't think they can get it done. Now, you might say, well, that's really different, Jody. I'm glad I don't think like that. I am too. Sincerely, I am too. Because those people with a poor self-image are always wearing a mask, hiding from themselves and other people because they can't stand failure. It only spells a disaster. Yet you show me a man who's right just 51% of the time, I'll show you a multimillionaire. That's why we're reminded of the phrase about the uncommon man. I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon if I can. I seek opportunity, not security. I refuse to barter incentive for a dole. I prefer the challenges of life to the guaranteed existence, the thrill of achievement to the stale calm of utopia. Well, you could say, Jody, how did their self-image get fractured along the way? You know, they had great parents, a great attitude, a great home, great lifestyle. What happened? Well, if they don't share the same values with other people, fears and guilt will help destroy a good self-image. They do things they know are wrong. They know they're wrong, but they do them anyway. And then guilt then is kind of a weird thing because it grinds inside you, and sometimes even though it's unnoticed, but therefore you become hesitant in decision-making and you stop liking yourself. Overachievers sometimes can ruin a good self-image. They overachieve at work. They just overachieve. Their lawn is so long, it could be lawn of the century. They just overachieve. They're just plowing everything into something that's a tangible thing and instead of taking a little bit of extra time for themselves. Or another thing that can destroy a good self-image is they love criticism to a fault. Oh, kick me again. I love it. Okay. Some people love criticism to a fault because they look to be approved by everybody. And I'm here to say to you that in our Plan B approach to business, we will not be loved and accepted by everybody, and that's okay. Regular people don't understand. That's okay. That's the good news. Or they compare themselves to others. That can also ruin a good self-image. Boy, if you were just more like so-and-so. Look, do your best and forget it. Move on. It may not be the best, but it's your best. Like you should see me hit a golf ball compared to Tiger Woods. I'm awesome for Jody. But for Tiger's measurement, I stink. But I don't go around beating myself up because I'm comparing my golf shot with Tiger. He has worked at it far greater than I am. And then because he had the talent and the ability and all the great coaching, he now gets even more coaching and free stuff. That's despicable. The very guy who could afford clubs gets them for free. He even gets $1 million appearance fee just to appear. I'd show up for far less. I'm sure you would too, right? What else can destroy a good self-image? You and I know what it is. It's listening to the negative, mealy-mouthed, regular world that just whines and complains about everything. Matter of fact, if they couldn't complain, they wouldn't have a conversation. Avoid these people. The negative influence of other people, the NIOPs, N-I-O-P. 3 kinds of people that are around you every day. They're the type of person that can only hurt you. Avoid them. There's the type of person that can't hurt you or help you. Say hi to them. Then there's a third type of person, all they can do is help you. Try to surround yourself with them. Avoid things that you know are wrong. Don't believe in inappropriate inadequacies. Don't seek to promote yourself above someone else or at the expense of someone else. A man with a good self-image can promote his fellow team member because he's secure who he is. When you have a good self-image, you have the capacity to make the other guy successful. Whereby a poor self-image guy claws all he can claw because he will not and truly cannot help the other guy by his own definition of himself. A good, healthy self-image is absolutely essential to succeed at life, at home, in business, social, church, family, children, wife, and husband. A good self-image says, I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to be the best, just my best. And I can be open without the fear of attack. Best part is you don't have to conform to what's normal. So how do you develop a good self-image on a regular basis? You know you've got one. How do you even make it better? Well, that's the great news. There's several positive, healthy, constructive things a person can do. First of all, understand that you can pick up that paintbrush and you can begin immediately to repaint, resculpture, resand, prune on the canvas of your mind. Hallelujah, amen, past the paintbrushes. I mean, I think that's wonderful. Don't slip on this one, but it does take work and maintenance on a regular basis. So the beginning of a good self-image is to read something like, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, and it is in your way of thinking. I would ask you a question. If I had a big mirror and I held it up here and I said, look into the mirror, do you like what you see? Now, some of you would say, well, yes, I like what I see. Some of you may say no, without any reason. Others of you might say, well, yes and no. I mean, you're not sure. Because when most people look in the mirror, they look for the physical attributes. Is my lipstick on right? Is my hair combed? Not necessarily the mental attributes. So if very little is needed in life, if everything is already inside of you, how productive then inside of you, that voice that talks to you, how productive do you expect yourself to be? And how much desire do you expect to crank out, or do you think is needed to have a happy life? Some people say, and I've heard this one, and maybe you've heard it, personally they'll tell me, I'm always ready to learn, Jody, although I don't always like being taught. I don't know if any of you are like that or not. But you should have heard the first time I gave a talk on self-image to a big crowd of people in 1977. The audience was filled with people, row after row, who did not like being taught. When you look in the mirror, think about this. Do you like the person that you see? Now, I didn't ask you if you liked everything. But the person that you see in your mind is the most important. The person that you see in your mind is the person you've already visualized. See, you've already decided what you looked like before you even glanced toward the mirror. You can pretty much sum yourself up, what kind of person you are, what you're capable of doing, what you're capable of being. You don't need to really read The Tipping Point or Blink by Malcolm Caldwell, but when you do, you can see that you do slice and dice and you do run through different events. Even when looking at opportunity, people who look at our business for the very first time or they're brand new IBOs will sometimes set their goal for what they want to accomplish because they already have decided what they're capable of doing and capable of being. And then we kind of mess that all up. Because now they're on a team. Well, then it's not solely if it is to be, it's up to me. It's also up to we. And so then they'll go down another path. They'll choose other things instead of the success opportunities. Therefore, it doesn't really make a difference if you looked in the mirror or not. You only looked to see if your hair was combed, if your lipstick was on right. In other words, you've already visualized your self-image, each and every one of you. And until you develop a good self-image, your attitude about business and life will never be right. If some of you do not have a sparkling, spot-free, wonderful, very refreshing self-image, and understanding that you're not a reaction or a product of your environment, you got to decide which one you think you are, because you really are a reaction to your environment. So then you have to define what is a good self-image. What is good? Well, it's positive. Well, what's that mean? Well, it's proper. Well, what's that mean? Well, it means they understand the difference between fact versus opinion. So if someone would laugh at them about their business endeavor or their dream or their goal, it wouldn't bother them. It's also important that you understand that your business about business and life will never be right because you project to others what you feel about you. Do you realize that? You project to others what it is that you feel about yourself. No man achieves great success who is unwilling to make personal sacrifices. And one of the first and foremost personal sacrifices we must make is defining. But it's interesting. Her whole day rearranged was still finished and done, and she made her appointment. And I see her do it on a regular basis. She has a positive, a proper, a dedicated self-esteem and self-image that drives her through her day. I'm amazed. It shares a message with me that we must be constantly changing, rearranging, altering, eliminating, pruning, prodding, motivating, sculpturing, sanding, and polishing in order to become what you want to be. Now, did I say that too fast and you couldn't write it down? Well, it's coming to an audio near you. You have to will it, right? to do it. You can't just want it. Wannabes. You got to be a Willoughby type of thing. Program your subconscious mind. The greatest piece of real estate you own is the 6 inches between your ears. After all, you were created in his image. You are somebody. So man is created by thought. What a man thinks, so he becomes. So this is the story as it goes. Man then sows a thought, reaps an action. Sows an action, reaps a habit. Sows a habit, reaps a destiny. So there's a process. It isn't something that you have to just leap over a building in a single bound. You don't have to be Superman or Spider-Man. But you do have to be someone who understands that you can control your own destiny by your own thinking. By the right thinking, sanding, pruning, you can become the master of your own destiny. The development of the self-image, well, most of us, that began when we were born. And there's a lot of great studies about this. I think you can talk to people who will tell you that when your mother or loved one first rocked you and kissed your head, it was the development of your self-image and self-awareness. Think about that. So one of the problems that some people are hung up with about the development of their self-image is that it got mangled early in their life. That's right. My mom didn't kiss me. She popped me on the head with a pan or something. Poor me, they'll say. I'm a product of my environment. And we'll say, no, you're not. Because you can get kissed and blessed and hugged and begin to resand, resculpture on the canvas of your mind. But have you ever heard people say, you're no good, you'll never be good, shame on you, you are bad, or he's lazy, he won't amount to much, he can't do it, I told you so, I don't know what I'll ever do with him. Assassination? Think about it. Young children hear, feel, or receive no discipline in today's age. Smart thinking, yet the parent will throw their hands in the air and say, I just couldn't do anything right. Even though they might even find the child repeating the same statement one day. Well, I just couldn't do anything right. Yet Dr. Phil says this can be easily fixed. But before he says that, he says, well, how's that been working for you? But it gets our attention a little bit, doesn't it? Understand, it's our reaction to we want to get the positive results. The primary reason why people have a poor self-image is in their early years and influences. And so we can begin to change that. That's why we have conferences. That's why we have BDSs. That's why we subscribe to a team support. That's why you'll read books that are very popular. Have you ever heard of Chicken Soup for the Soul? An extremely popular book, read by a lot of people. However, sometimes they don't seem to see the results because they don't have you. It doesn't do you any good if you've got the fan but no place to plug it in. You can have the idea, you can have the vehicle, but without the gasoline, without the energy, without the MMP game plan, it's just superlatives. It's feel-good stuff. And it could cost you a lot of money. One fellow was sharing with me the other day. He said, I was amazed. He said, I went to the conference. It was only $47, but the packages were $350 of the things that I needed. But worse than that, even if he paid $47 and paid $350, if he didn't have anything to channel it in, all he'd be is a very happy person, sort of. Cobwebs can slip in there. You do need to hang out with the right people. You do need to announce and profess your values. You do need to not backslide, but to stand up for what you believe in and be the very best you can. Faith is the most important part of that. Begin today. You were created in His image. You should think you're awesome. He does. I mean, it should just so excite you. You should just say, man, I am destined for success. I can't wait to meet myself. Without the arrogance, of course. Fill your mind with positives. Positive affirmations every day are very important, such as, I'm becoming more and more enthusiastic about my business. I find it easier and easier to meet and prospect people. People are becoming more and more attracted to find out what I'm doing. We're building a huge business. I'm becoming more consistent in making time every day to make 3 new contacts. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm focused on showing the concept a minimum of 3 times each week, consistently. Our team is growing, and so are our points. Yahoo, amen. I've never become so effective. It's scary to myself how effective I am at scheduling my calendar to make the calls, to set the appointments so that my business works effectively. Oh, I'm awesome. I'm becoming a positive overcomer and an accountable strategic partner. And I look for ways to constantly offer help and expand the team. Those are things you can do. Proper building blocks. They come from books, audios, and hanging out with the right people. You can also start with forgiveness. Get rid of that thing that you're harboring. As long as it's there, it'll chip away at your security. If you're harboring get rid of it. Write it down on a piece of paper, stand in the smallest room of your house, flush it. Make deposits without a thought of gain, meaning go out and do good works with good people without looking how they're going to get back to you. It'll all work out. I call it make and shake. Make deposits and shake hands, make a new friend. Make and shake. I call it make, shake, and stop. Make deposits, shake hands, make a new friend, but also stop thinking about the past faults, failures, and weaknesses. Make, shake, and stop. If that gets confusing to you, it was to me the first time too. Start concentrating on successes and where you want to go, not where you've been. Repaint your self-image, a whole new you. This business can be the answer, the vehicle to be great. A reaction so that you can learn to control. Yay! You can actually help another person become a better person. Isn't that great? See, sometimes when people look at our business, they think it's about them. Oh, it's all about me. And so they'll say, well, I don't really know if I could do this. I don't know if I really like that. You know what? It isn't anything to do with you or what you want to do or that particular product or service. It's about how we can be better to be a part of a team to help a lot of other people. Because I always say to them, what if you knew me? You mean because of your short-sightedness, your shortcomings, because of your poor self-image or your self-esteem, or because you don't want much or it doesn't take a lot to make you happy, you'd pass over me. What if you knew me? I would have been thrilled if you would have shared this business with me, brought me online on the team to be a part of your team. You mean you wouldn't have involved me because of your insidious definition of what it is? You wouldn't have at least, how can you quit something you haven't tried? I mean, I would have thought you would at least shared it with me first. There's more me's out there. Special. Special is a word that's used to describe something that's one of a kind. Like a hug or a sunset. Or a person who spreads love with a smile or kind gesture. Special. When you sign on, you become a part of MMP, you're special in a very positive way. Special describes people who act from the heart and keep in the mind the hearts of others. Kathy and I have received so many neat cards, notes, letters, emails from very special people, reminding us that nobody starts at the finish line. Special applies to something that's admired, precious, and which can never be replaced. But understand, more importantly than anything else, the 6 inches between your ears, special, absolutely, positively, definitely. Special is the best word to describe you. It's been great sharing with you.
This is a copyrighted program of Legacy Leadership Collective, powered by Markerman Productions, affiliated with MarkerNet Incorporated.